Picture this: a misty evening in a quiet village, where a shattered cameo brooch lies hidden under a rose bush, its cracked face whispering secrets of love and betrayal. What dark truths could this tiny relic unravel? Chapter 1. The Village Whispers We begin in the heart of St. Mary Mead, picturesque English village where the air hums with the soft clink of teacups and the murmur of gossip. Miss Jane Marple, our sharp-eyed sleuth, sits in her quaint cottage, her knitting needles clicking. Rhythmically, as she works on a scarf for her nephew Raymond, the fire crackles in the hearth, casting a warm glow over her collection of well-worn books and delicate china. It's a peaceful scene, but peace in St. Mary Mead is often just a prelude to intrigue. Suddenly, a sharp knock at the door breaks the calm. It's Mrs. Eleanor Bantry, her face ashen, her hands trembling as she clutches a small, tattered velvet pouch. "Jane, I need your help," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's about Arthur, and this." Eleanor empties the pouch onto Miss Marple's polished oak table, revealing a shattered cameo brooch. The antique piece, no larger than a teacup saucer, is broken into 3 jagged fragments. Its carved ivory depicts a woman with flowing hair and a serene expression. But a deep crack slices through her face, splitting one eye into a haunting image that feels like it's staring back. Miss Marple leans in, her curiosity piqued. "How did you come by this, Eleanor?" she asks, her tone gentle but probing. Eleanor explains that she found it that very morning, half buried under a rose bush in her garden, a bush her late husband, Arthur Bantry, had tended religiously until his sudden death 6 months ago. The official report called it a heart attack, but the village rumor mill churns with darker theories. Poison. Perhaps slipped into his evening sherry by someone close. Miss Marple adjusts her spectacles and examines the cameo's pieces under the soft light of her lamp. "This break isn't natural," she observes, tracing the edges with a delicate finger. "The cuts are too precise, almost as if someone meant to destroy it or to hide something within it." She turns the largest fragment over, revealing a faint engraving on the back. "To my eternal love, 1892. The words hang in the air like a question mark. Did Arthur ever speak of an old romance, Eleanor? Or perhaps a family heirloom? Eleanor shakes her head, but her eyes flicker with unease, as if she's holding back a memory she'd rather forget. Miss Marple doesn't press yet. She knows that secrets like flowers bloom in their own time. Over a pot of steaming Earl Grey, Miss Marple shares a bit of wisdom from her years of unraveling human nature. "Start with the ordinary," she advises. "Mysteries often hide in plain sight, habits, routines, the things people take for granted. For instance, why did Arthur insist on tending those roses himself? Why never let the gardener near them? It's a practical tip for sleuthing. Always notice what's consistent. Because inconsistencies are where the truth hides." Eleanor nods, sipping her tea, but her hands still tremble. She mentions a few villagers who might have had motives. There's Colonel Lucius Prothero, Arthur's old business rival, who'd been furious over a land deal gone sour. Then there's Lucy, the Bantry's young maid, who's been acting skittish lately, sneaking out at odd hours. Perhaps hiding a secret lover or something stolen from the house. Miss Marple suggests a simple strategy. "Keep a journal, Eleanor. Write down everything unusual, no matter how small. Who visits, what they say, even the weather details have a way of connecting." She demonstrates with an example, pulling out a small notebook of her own. "Last week I noted that the postman lingered at Mrs. Clement's gate for 10 minutes, chatting with her gardener. It seemed trivial, but it led me to uncover a small theft of garden tools. Details matter." Eleanor agrees to try, though her nerves suggest she's not entirely ready for what she might uncover. As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the village in hues of gold and shadow, Miss Marple walks Eleanor to the door. The garden outside is quiet, but the rosebush looms in the distance, its thorny silhouette hiding who knows what. "This cameo is our first thread," Miss Marple says, her voice calm but resolute. "Pull it gently, and we'll see what unravels. The shattered brooch isn't just a broken trinket. It's a clue to a mystery that could shake St. Mary Mead to its core. Next time, we'll visit the local antique shop, where a shifty dealer might know more about this cameo than he's willing to share. Stay tuned for Chapter 2, where the plot thickens and the secrets deepen. Chapter 2. The antique dealer's secret. The morning sun filters through the lace curtains of Miss Marple's cottage, casting delicate patterns on the floor as she prepares for a trip into the heart of St. Mary Mead. With the shattered cameo safely tucked into her handbag, wrapped in a soft cloth, she sets out for the village's only antique shop, a cramped little store called Bygone Treasures. The cameos, engraving "To My Eternal Love, 1892, has been nagging at her mind, and she's determined to uncover its origins. The shop, run by Mr. Reginald Finch, is known for its dusty shelves crammed with relics, but also for Finch's reputation as a man who knows more about his wares than he lets on. Miss Marple's steps are brisk, her mind sharp. She knows that in a village like this, secrets are often hidden behind polite smiles and polished counters. As she pushes open the shop's creaky door, a bell jingles overhead announcing her arrival. The air inside is thick with the scent of old wood and wax polish. Shelves groan under the weight of tarnished silverware, chipped porcelain, and faded paintings, while a glass case near the counter displays jewelry that glints faintly in the dim light. Mr. Finch, a wiry man with slick-back hair and a perpetually nervous smile, looks up from a ledger. "Miss Marple, what a pleasure," he says, though his eyes dart to her handbag as if he senses trouble. She smiles warmly, disarming him with her grandmotherly charm. Explains she's come to inquire about a cameo brooch. Nothing special, just a curiosity she stumbled upon. When she places the broken pieces on the counter, Finch's face tightens, just for a moment, before he recovers with a cough. "Oh my, what a shame," he says, peering at the fragments through a jeweler's loupe. Fine craftsmanship. Victorian, likely mid-19th century. But broken like this. Such a pity. Miss Marple watches him closely, noting the way his fingers linger on the largest piece, tracing the crack through the woman's face. "Have you seen this one before, Mr. Finch?" she asks lightly, as if making small talk. He hesitates a fraction too long and claims he hasn't, but his twitching mustache betrays him. Miss Marple shares a tip for anyone sleuthing. Always watch for the pause. People lie with words, but their bodies often tell the truth, she'd say, if you were sitting across from her. That hesitation is her first clue that Finch knows more than he's admitting, to ease the tension. Miss Marple shifts the conversation, asking about cameos in general. Finch, eager to move on, explains their history, carved from shell or stone. Often depicting classical figures, they were popular gifts among lovers in the Victorian era. This one, he says, pointing to the broken face, has a unique style. Italian, perhaps with that flowing hair, but the engraving. Personal, intimate. Not something you'd find in a common shop. His words are careful. But Miss Marple catches a flicker of recognition when she mentions the year 1892. She presses gently, asking if Arthur Bantry, Eleanor's late husband, ever brought similar pieces to sell or appraise. Finch claims Arthur was a regular customer, always hunting for rare antiques, but nothing specific comes to mind. Yet his hands fidget with a pen, another telltale sign that she browses the shop. Pretending to admire a chipped teapot, Miss Marple recalls another sleuthing tip: create a distraction to loosen tongues. She accidentally knocks over a small brass figurine, apologizing profusely as Finch scrambles to pick it up. In the flurry, she asks, almost casually, if anyone else in the village collects cameos, perhaps Colonel Prothero, Arthur's rival, or even Lucy, the Bantry's maid, who's been acting oddly. Finch's response is quick, too quick. "Oh, no, just Arthur. Nobody else." But his eyes dart to a locked drawer behind the counter, a detail Miss Marple files away. She thanks him, promising to return if she finds more pieces, and leaves the shop with a polite nod. The bell jingling behind her. Back on the cobblestone street, Miss Marple pauses to jot a few notes in her pocketbook. Finch knows the cameo. Nervous. Locked drawer. Check Arthur's visits. She's learned that mysteries often hinge on connections, people, places, objects, and Finch is now a link in the chain. The Cameo story is starting to take shape, but it's tangled with the village's undercurrents, old rivalries, hidden loves, maybe even greed. As she heads toward the village square where the postman is chatting with a group of locals, she wonders what Arthur was hiding and why someone wanted that Cameo broken. The next chapter will take us to Colonel Prothero's manor, where a heated argument and a suspicious ledger might shed light on this growing puzzle. Stay tuned for more secrets in St. Mary Mead. Chapter 3. The Colonel's ledger. The afternoon sun bathed St. Mary Mead in a golden haze, as Miss Jane Marple makes her way along a winding lane toward Colonel Lucius Prothero's imposing manor. The house, with its ivy-clad walls and tall chimneys, looms at the edge of the village like a stern guardian of secrets. Miss Marple's mind is still buzzing from her visit to Mr. Finch's antique shop, where his nervous twitches in that locked drawer hinted at a connection to the shattered Cameo. Now, her sights are set on the Colonel, Arthur Bantry's old business rival, whose heated disputes over a land deal have made him a person of interest. With her handbag swinging gently at her side, the broken Cameo safely inside, Miss Marple is ready to tug another thread in this unraveling mystery. She arrives at the manor's heavy oak door and is greeted by Mrs. Harris, the Colonel's housekeeper, a stout woman with a no-nonsense air. The Colonel's in his study, Mrs. Harris says, eyeing Miss Marple's modest hat and shawl with a hint of curiosity. He's not one for visitors, mind you, but I'll see if he's free. As Miss Marple waits in the grand foyer, she takes in the details. A faded Persian rug, a grandfather clock ticking solemnly, and a portrait of a stern-looking woman in Victorian dress, her brooch catching the light. It's not a Cameo, but the resemblance to the broken one in her bag makes Miss Marple's fingers itch to take notes. The Colonel, a burly man with a gray mustache and a voice like gravel, invites her into his study with a grudging nod. The room is a chaos of papers, maps, and leather-bound books, with a heavy desk dominating the space. Miss Marple, isn't it? He says, barely looking up from a ledger. What brings you here? Not selling raffle tickets for the church, I hope? She smiles, her eyes crinkling with warmth, and explains she's looking into an old piece of jewelry for a friend, nothing important, just a bit of village history. She produces the shattered Cameo, laying the pieces on a blotter. The Colonel's reaction is immediate. His jaw tightens, and his pen freezes mid-scribble. Where did you get that? He demands, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. Miss Marple keeps her voice light, as if discussing the weather. Oh, it turned up in a garden. Curious thing, broken so deliberately. You wouldn't know anything about it, would you? Perhaps from your dealings with Arthur Bantry? The Colonel snorts, leaning back in his chair. Arthur and I had our differences, but Cameos? Not my concern. He was always chasing trinkets, wasting money on relics. But his fingers drum on the desk, and Miss Marple notes another sleuthing tip. Watch for restless hands. Nervousness often betrays knowledge. She'd tell you if you were sipping tea with her. She shifts tactics, asking about the land deal that soured their friendship, a plot near the river that Arthur bought out from under the Colonel. Grudgingly, the Colonel admits the deal left him bitter. Arthur played dirty, he grumbles. Paid off the surveyor to rush the sale. Cost me a fortune. Miss Marple nods sympathetically, her mind racing. Could the Cameo be tied to that deal? Is it a bribe, a gift, or something more personal? She notices an open ledger on the desk, its pages filled with meticulous entry states, sums, and cryptic notes. One catches her eye. AB 1892, payment deferred. The year matches the Cameo's engraving, and her pulse quickens. Keep detailed records, she remarks, gesturing to the ledger. Ever note down Arthur's purchases? Maybe something about this Cameo? The Colonel snaps the book shut, his face reddening. My business is my own, he says curtly. But the damage is done. Miss Marple has seen enough to ease the tension. She shares a practical tip. When unraveling a mystery, always look at what's written down.
Ledgers.
Letters, even grocery. Lists people reveal themselves in their records. She once solved a case of missing silverware by noticing a servant's shopping list included an unusual amount of polish. The colonel, eager to change the subject, offers her tea, but she declines, sensing it's time to leave. As Mrs. Harris shows her out, Miss Marple asks casually if the colonel has been himself lately any odd visitors or late-night outings. The housekeeper hesitates, then whispers, "He's been burning papers in the garden at night. Old letters, I think. Started right after Mr. Bantry's death." Back on the lane, Miss Marple pauses under a willow tree to jot in her notebook. Colonel's ledger, 1892. A.B. burning papers. Check land deal records. The Cameo's mystery is growing, tangled with old grudges and hidden transactions. Colonel's reaction and that ledger entry suggest Arthur's death and the Cameo's destruction might be linked to more than just a broken heart. As the village church bells chime in the distance, Miss Marple heads toward the vicarage, where young Lucy, the Bantry's maid, might hold the next clue. Stay tuned for Chapter 4, where a nervous confession and a hidden letter deepen the puzzle of St. Mary Mead. Chapter 4. The Maid's Confession. The late afternoon light casts long shadows across the cobblestone paths of St. Mary Mead as Miss Jane Marple approaches the vicarage, quaint stone building nestled beside the ancient church. Her mind is a whirl of clues from her earlier encounters. The nervous twitch of Mr. Finch at the antique shop, it's a cryptic ledger entry in Colonel Prothero's study, and the shattered Cameo itself, its engraving to my eternal love. 1892. Hinting at a story buried deep in the village's past. Now, her focus turns to Lucy, the Bantry's young maid, whose skittish behavior has raised suspicions. Miss Marple's steps are measured but purposeful, her sensible shoes clicking softly as she carries the broken Cameo in her handbag, wrapped in its protective cloth. She knows that in a village like this, even the quietest souls can hold the loudest secrets. The vicarage garden is a riot of late summer bloom's rose, its lavender, and foxgloves swaying in the gentle breeze. Miss Marple finds Lucy there, kneeling by a flower bed, her hands muddy from weeding. The girl, barely 20, with auburn hair tucked under a cap, settles at the sight of Miss Marple, dropping her trowel with a clatter. "Oh, Miss Marple, I didn't see you," she stammers, her cheeks flushing. Miss Marple offers a reassuring smile, the kind that could coax a confession from a stone. "No need to fuss, dear," she says, settling onto a nearby bench. "I was just passing by and thought I'd ask you about something. A little matter concerning Mrs. Bantry." Lucy's eyes dart to the ground, and Miss Marple notes the telltale sign of guilt, avoidance. When someone won't meet your gaze, she'd tell you over tea. They're often hiding something, sometimes even from themselves. Easing into the conversation, Miss Marple asks about Lucy's work at the Bantry household. It must be hard with Mr. Bantry gone, she says gently. "You were fond of him, weren't you?" Lucy nods, her fingers twisting the hem of her apron. She admits Arthur was kind, always slipping her an extra shilling for her troubles, but her voice trembles when she mentions his death. Miss Marple decides it's time to show her hand. She carefully unwraps the Cameo pieces and lays them on the bench. "Have you ever seen this, Lucy? It was found in Mrs. Bantry's garden near the rosebush." The girl's reaction is immediate. Her breath catches and her hands fly to her mouth. "Yes, that's the brooch," she whispers, then clamps her lips shut. As if regretting the words, Miss Marple leans forward, her voice soft but firm. "What do you know about it, dear? No one's in trouble, not yet. But the truth has a way of coming out, and it's better to help it along." Lucy hesitates, her eyes brimming with tears. After a long pause, she confesses, "I saw it once, in Mr. Bantry's study. He was holding it late at night, maybe a month before he died. I was bringing in his tea, and he hid it quick, like he didn't want me to see. But I noticed the lady's face. It was so pretty, even broken." Miss Marple nods, encouraging her to continue. Lucy admits she overheard Arthur muttering about debts and promises kept, words that didn't make sense at the time. He sounded scared, she adds, her voice barely audible, sensing Lucy's fear. Miss Marple shares a sleuthing tip. When you're piecing together a puzzle, listen to the emotions behind the words. Fear, anger, love, they're like colors in a painting, showing you the shape of the truth. She asks if Lucy noticed anything else unusual, perhaps visitors to the house or letters Arthur received. Lucy bites her lip, then reveals a bombshell. there was a letter. Miss, I found it in the study after he died, tucked inside a book. It was old, yellowed, with fancy writing. I didn't read. It felt wrong, but I hid it under my mattress. I was scared someone might find it. Miss Marple's heart quickens, but she keeps her expression calm. That was wise, Lucy. Could you fetch it for me? It might help Mrs. Bantry. Lucy hesitates, then nods, leading Miss Marple into the vicarage's small servant quarters. Under her thin mattress, she pulls a crumpled envelope, its wax seal broken, but bearing the faint outline of a rose. The letter inside is written in elegant script, dated 1892, and addressed to my dearest Arthur. Miss Marple skims it, catching phrases like "our secret must stay buried" and "the cameo binds us." It begins with an E. Not Eleanor, surely, but someone else from Arthur's past. Miss Marple tucks the letter into her handbag, promising Lucy she'll keep her name out of it. You've done the right thing, she says, patting the girl's hand. Secrets are heavy, but sharing them lightens the load. As they return to the garden, Miss Marple notices a figure watching from the churchyard, a man in a dark coat. Too far to identify. Chapter 5. Shadows in the Archives. The early evening air in St. Mary Mead carries the scent of damp earth and fading roses as Miss Jane Marple makes her way to the village hall, a modest brick building that houses the local archives. Her mind is a tapestry of clues, each thread carefully woven from her recent encounters. Mr. Finch's nervous fidgeting, Colonel Prothero's cryptic ledger, and Lucy's tearful confession about the hidden letter, now tucked securely in Miss Marple's handbag alongside the shattered cameo. The letter's words, "our secret must stay buried," and "the cameo binds us," echo in her thoughts, pointing to a scandal from 1892 that seems to pulse beneath the village's tranquil surface, with the sun dipping low, casting long shadows across the cobblestone street. Miss Marple is determined to unearth the truth hidden in dusty records. The village hall is quiet, save for the soft creak of floorboards as Miss Marple steps inside. The archives, tucked in a small room at the back, are managed by Miss Clara Weatherby, spinster with a passion for local history and a memory as sharp as her pince-nez glasses. Clara greets Miss Marple with a warm, if slightly curious, smile. "Jane, what brings you here so late?" she asks, adjusting a stack of yellowed ledgers. Miss Marple, ever disarming, explains she's tracing the history of an old cameo for a friend. It's possibly linked to the Bantry family. "Just a bit of nostalgia," she says lightly, though her keen eyes are already scanning the shelves for records from the 1890s. Clara, delighted by the prospect of a historical puzzle, ushers her to a table piled with bound volumes and parish registers. As they settle in, Miss Marple shares a sleuthing tip. Old records are like gossip frozen in time. They tell you who was where, with whom, and why, provided you know where to look. She suggests starting with 1892, the year etched on the cameo and mentioned in the letter. Clara pulls a heavy ledger labeled St. Mary Mead, 1890 to 1895. Its pages brittle but legible. Together they pore over entries of births, deaths, and marriages. The ink faded, but the story's vivid. Miss Marple's finger pauses on a marriage record. Arthur Bantry, age 25. Wed Eleanor Grayson in June 1892. "That's earlier than I thought," Miss Marple murmurs, noting the timing aligns with the cameo's engraving. But the letters. Signature, starting with an E, doesn't match Eleanor's name, as she used a pet name or a pseudonym. Digging deeper, they find a curious entry in the parish gossip column, a handwritten newsletter tucked into the ledger. It mentions a scandalous affair involving a young Arthur Bantry and an E.L., a lady of means from London, who visited St. Mary Mead in the summer of 1892. The column hints at a broken engagement and a token of affection exchanged. Before the lady vanished, Miss Marple's pulse quickens. Could E.L. be the letter's author, and the cameo that token? She asks Clara about local families from that era, particularly any with ties to London. Clara recalls the Langley family, who owned a now-abandoned manor on the village outskirts. Emmeline Langley was their daughter, Clara says. She left suddenly in 92, after some whispered row with her father. Never came back. Miss Marple pulls the letter from her handbag, careful not to let Clara see its full contents. The handwriting matches the elegant script of the parish. Records and the rose-shaped wax seal echoes a design Clara mentions was used by the Langleys. Emmeline was artistic, Clara adds, always sketching or carving trinkets. She'd have loved a cameo. Miss Marple nods, her mind racing. Was the cameo a gift from Emmeline to Arthur, or vice versa? And why was it shattered, buried under Arthur's rosebush? She shares another tip. When you find a name, follow it. People leave trails, letters, debts, even grudges, she asks Clara to check for any Langley records, particularly sales or transfers of property around 1892. Clara unearths a faded deed showing Emmeline's father sold a plot near the river, the same one Colonel Prothero fought over to Arthur Bantry. In late 1892, the timing is too close to be coincidence. Miss Marple jots in her notebook. Emmeline Langley, 1892. Affair with Arthur? Land deal link. Check Rosebush origins. The archives are proving a goldmine, but the air grows heavy with the weight of old secrets. As Clara locks the ledger away, she mentions a rumor. Some say Emmeline left behind a diary hidden in the old manor. Never found, but folks still talk. Miss Marple's eyes light up at the prospect, though she keeps her excitement veiled. As she steps outside the village, is cloaked in twilight, the street lamps flickering to life. A rustle in the nearby hedge catches her attention. A figure darts away. It's too quick to identify, but the same dark coat she glimpsed in the churchyard lingers in her memory. Someone is watching, and Miss Marple feels the mystery tightening around her like a net. The cameo, the letter, and now Emmeline Langley form a triangle of secrets, with Arthur's death at its center. As she walks home, the church clock strikes 7, its chimes echoing like a warning. Stay tuned for Chapter 6, where a visit to the abandoned Langley Manor uncovers a hidden diary and a chilling clue that brings Miss Marple closer to the truth. Chapter 6. The Diary in the Dust. The first light of dawn paints St. Mary Mead in soft pinks and golds as Miss Jane Marple sets out for the abandoned Langley Manor. Her sturdy umbrella in hand as both a shield against the morning dew and a precaution for whatever she might find. The revelations from the village archives still linger in her mind. Emmeline Langley, the mysterious E.L. of 1892. Tied to Arthur Bantry through a scandalous affair and a land deal that sparked Colonel Prothero's grudge. The letter. In her handbag, with its cryptic plea to keep a secret buried, and the shattered cameos engraving to my eternal love. 1892 point to Emmeline as a key to the puzzle. Clara Weatherby's hint about a hidden diary has set Miss Marple on a new path, one that leads to the crumbling manor on the village's edge, where secrets have lain dormant for decades. The Langley Manor is a shadow of its former grandeur, its stone walls choked with ivy and its windows boarded or broken. The iron gate creaks as Miss Marple pushes it open, her eyes scanning the overgrown garden for signs of recent visitors. The air is heavy with the scent of damp moss and decay, and the silence feels watchful, as if the house itself is holding its breath. She recalls a sleuthing tip. Old places keep their secrets close, but they always leave traces, scratches, footprints, things move just so. As she steps onto the sagging porch, she notices fresh scuff marks in the dust, suggesting someone has been here recently. Perhaps the figure in the dark coat she's glimpsed twice now. Inside, the manor is a maze of cobwebs and faded elegance. The grand staircase is coated in grime, and the air is thick with the musty smell of neglect. Miss Marple moves carefully, her umbrella tapping the floor to test 4-week boards. Begins in the parlor, where peeling wallpaper reveals glimpses of rose-patterned silk, a match for the wax seal on Emmeline's letter. Her goal is to find the diary Clara mentioned, likely hidden in a place Emmeline felt safe. People hide things where they feel at home, Miss Marple would tell you. In desks, under floorboards, or behind paintings. She checks the fireplace mantel, running her fingers along its edges for hidden compartments, but finds only dust and a cracked porcelain figurine upstairs. She enters what must have been Emmeline's bedroom, judging by the faded lace curtains, and a vanity table cluttered with tarnished hairpins and a cracked mirror. A small bookshelf holds a few moldering novels, Miss Marple's heart skips as she spots a volume of poetry by Tennyson, Arthur's favorite poet, Eleanor once mentioned. Let it out, and a slim, leather-bound diary slips to the floor, kicking up a cloud of dust. The cover is embossed with EL, and Miss Marple's fingers tremble slightly as she opens it. The pages are fragile, the ink faded but legible. The entries begin in spring 1892. Emmeline's words are vivid. Arthur is a dream, but father forbids it. He says a bantry is beneath us, but my heart won't listen. Another entry, dated July 1892, describes a gift. I carved the cameo for him, my face in ivory so he'll never forget. He swore we'd run away, but the land deal changed everything. Miss Marple pauses, piecing it together. The cameo was Emmeline's creation, a lover's token for Arthur. But the land deal, likely the one Colonel Prothero lost, drove a wedge between them. A later entry chills her. Father found out. He threatens to ruin Arthur if I don't leave. I broke the cameo tonight to break my heart with it. It's hidden where only he will know. The final entry, scrawled in haste, reads, I'm leaving for London. Arthur, forgive me. The rosebush will keep our secret. Miss Marple's mind races. The rosebush in Eleanor's garden, where the cameo was found, was planted by Arthur. Did he dig it up to retrieve the broken pieces, only to die soon after? As she tucks the diary into her handbag, a floorboard creaks behind her. She turns, umbrella raised, but sees only a shadow flit across the hallway. Her heart pounds, but she steadies herself, noting the direction of the sound toward the back stairs. She follows cautiously, finding a broken window at the rear of the house, its frame freshly splintered. Someone was here and they didn't want to be seen. Marple jots in her notebook. Emmeline's diary, 1892. Cameo hers. Rosebush link, intruder in manner. She shares another tip. When you're close to the truth, someone always gets nervous. Watch for those who run there often, the ones with the most to hide. Outside, the morning mist is lifting, revealing the village waking to life. Miss Marple feels the weight of the diary and the cameo, to pieces of a puzzle that now points to a love story gone wrong. A land deal steeped in betrayal, and a death that might not have been natural. The figure in the dark coat looms in her thoughts. Could it be Finch, the colonel, or someone else entirely? As she locks the manor gate behind her, the church bells chime 8, a reminder that time is ticking. Stay tuned for Chapter 7, where Miss Marple confronts Eleanor with the diary's revelations, and a shocking discovery in the rosebush deepens the mystery of St. Mary Mead. Chapter 7. The Rosebush Revelation. The morning sun climbs higher over St. Mary Mead, bathing the village in a warm golden light that belies the chill of secrets Miss Jane Marple carries in her heart. Her walk back from the abandoned Langley Manor is slow and deliberate, her sensible shoes crunching on the gravel path as she mulls over the diary of Emmeline Langley, and now nestled alongside the shattered cameo and the mysterious letter in her handbag. The diary's words paint a vivid picture. A forbidden love between Emmeline and Arthur Bantry in 1892. A cameo carved as a token of their bond, and a bitter parting tied to a land deal that left Colonel Prothero fuming. Emmeline's final entry, mentioning the rosebush as the hiding place for the broken cameo, has set Miss Marple's sights on Eleanor Bantry's garden. She suspects that Arthur's death, officially a heart attack, but whispered to be poison, may be linked to his discovery of the cameo's hiding place. As the church spire comes into view, Miss Marple resolves to confront Eleanor with the diary's revelations, but first, she must revisit the rosebush where this mystery began. Eleanor's cottage is a picture of pastoral charm, with its thatched roof and ivy-clad walls, but the garden feels different, today charged with an unspoken weight. Eleanor is there, pruning a lavender bush, her hands steady but her eyes shadowed with worry. "Jane, you're early," she says, brushing dirt from her gloves. Miss Marple smiles warmly, easing into the conversation as they sit on a wrought-iron bench overlooking the infamous rosebush. Its deep red blooms swayed gently, their roots hiding secrets Miss Marple is determined to unearth. "Eleanor, we need to talk about Arthur," she begins, her tone gentle but firm. "And about something I found, a diary that might explain why. That cameo was buried here. Leno's face pales, her fingers tightening around her pruning shears, but she nods. Inviting Miss Marple inside for tea in the cozy parlor, with its chintz curtains and ticking clock, Miss Marple lays out the diary, the letter, and the cameo pieces on the table. She recounts Emmeline Langley's story, a young woman in love with Arthur, forbidden by her father, who carved the cameo as a symbol of their bond before breaking it in despair. The diary says she hid it under the rosebush. Miss Marple explains, watching Eleanor's reaction. And Arthur planted that bush, didn't he? Did he ever speak of Emmeline? Eleanor's hands tremble as she pours tea, the cup rattling against its saucer. He mentioned her once, she admits, her voice barely audible. Years ago, before we married. Said she was a girl he loved, but it ended badly. It was just youthful folly. Her eyes avoid the cameo, and Miss Marple notes a sleuthing tip. When someone can't look at the evidence, they're often wrestling with guilt or fear. Sensing Eleanor's unease, Miss Marple suggests they examine the rosebush together. Sometimes the ground itself holds answers, she says, sharing another tip. Physical clue scratches, disturbed soil, hidden objects can speak louder than words. They head outside, armed with a small trowel and a gardener's determination. The rosebush is old, its roots gnarled and deep, but Miss Marple notices fresh earth near its base, as if someone has dug there recently. She kneels, her knees cushioned by a gardening pad, and begins to dig carefully, sifting through the soil. Eleanor watches, her breath shallow, as Miss Marple uncovers a small, tarnished silver box, its lid engraved with a rose matching the wax seal on Emmeline's letter. Inside is a single object, a tiny vial, empty but smelling faintly of bitter almonds. A scent Miss Marple recognizes from past cases as cyanide. Eleanor gasps, stepping back. That's not possible, she whispers. Arthur. He was poisoned. Miss Marple's mind races, connecting the vial to the rumors of Arthur's death. We need to be careful, she says, wrapping the vial in a handkerchief and tucking it into her handbag. Someone wanted this hidden, and they may still be watching. She glances toward the garden gate, half expecting to see the mysterious figure in the dark coat. But the lane is empty, save for a blackbird flitting through the hedge. To calm Eleanor, Miss Marple shares a story from her past. Once, in a case of stolen jewels, I found a locket buried under a hydrangea. It held a note that named the thief. Gardens, you see, are like diaries. They keep what people want forgotten. Back inside, Miss Marple presses Eleanor about Arthur's final days. Did he act strangely? Dig in the garden, perhaps? Or receive odd visitors? Eleanor hesitates, then admits Arthur was restless before his death, often wandering the garden. At night, he said he was checking the roses, she recalls. But once, I saw him with a spade digging near that bush. He looked haunted. She also mentions a visitor, a man in a dark coat, who came late one evening and left quickly. Miss Marple's notebook fills with new entries: silver box, cyanide vial, Arthur digging, man in dark coat. The pieces are falling into place, but the puzzle is far from complete. Was Arthur poisoned because he found the cameo? Who is the watcher in the shadows? As the afternoon fades, Miss Marple advises Eleanor to lock the vial away and tell no one. Secrets like this attract danger, she warns. We're close to something big, but we must tread lightly. Eleanor nods. Chapter 8. The hidden ledger. The late afternoon sun hangs low over St. Mary Mead, casting a soft amber glow across the village's cobblestone streets as Miss Jane Marple makes her way back to bygone treasures. The antique shop run by the evasive Mr. Reginald Finch. Her handbag feels heavier than ever, weighed down by the growing collection of clues. Emmeline Langley's diary, the cryptic letter, the shattered cameo with its haunting inscription, and now the chilling discovery of a cyanide vial buried under Eleanor Bantry's rosebush. The vial's bitter almond scent, a hallmark of poison, has confirmed the village whispers about Arthur Bantry's death. And Miss Marple's instincts tell her that Finch, with his nervous twitches and locked drawer, holds a key to unraveling this deadly puzzle. As she approaches the shop, the jingle of the bell above the door feels like a warning chime, signaling that the truth is close, but so is danger. Inside, the shop is as cluttered as before, with shelves groaning under the weight of dusty relics, and the air thick with the scent of old varnish. Mr. Finch is behind the counter, polishing a silver candlestick with a rag that's seen better days. His eyes narrow slightly at the sight of Miss Marple, but he forces a smile. "Back so soon, Miss Marple? Still chasing that broken cameo?" he asks, his voice a touch too cheerful. She nods, her expression as mild as a summer breeze, and settles onto a creaky stool by the counter. "Oh yes, Mr. Finch. It's turned into quite the puzzle. I was hoping you might recall something more about Arthur Bantry's visits, perhaps a record of his purchases?" Her tone is conversational, but her eyes are sharp, watching for the telltale signs she's learned to spot: a fidget, a glance, a hesitation. Finch's hands pause mid-polish, and Miss Marple shares a sleuthing tip. When someone stops moving, they're often thinking of a lure, deciding whether to tell the truth. She leans forward, her voice gentle but probing. "You see, I've learned a bit more about that cameo. It was carved by Emmeline Langley for Arthur. It's back in 1892, and I suspect you knew that when I showed it to you." Finch's smile falters, his fingers tightening around the candlestick. "Never heard of her," he says. But his voice cracks, and his eyes dart to the locked drawer behind the counter, the same one Miss Marple noticed during her first visit. She decides to push a little harder, pulling the cameo pieces from her handbag and laying them out like evidence in a courtroom. "It's curious, don't you think? This was found buried, and now I've found something else, a vial that smells of poison. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" The color drains from Finch's face, and he stammers, "Poison. I deal in antiques. Not that sort of thing." But his panic betrays him, and Miss Marple knows she struck a nerve. She shifts tactics, softening her approach to keep him talking. "Of course, Mr. Finch, I'm sure you're just a businessman. But Arthur was a regular here, wasn't he? Surely you kept records of what he bought or sold." She gestures to the ledger on the counter, its pages dog-eared and stained. Finch hesitates, then nods, pulling out a different bouquet-small. Leather-bound one from under the counter, not the one he'd been using. "This is from a few years back," he says, flipping it open with shaking hands. "Arthur's transactions are in here, but nothing about a cameo." Miss Marple peers over her spectacles, scanning the pages. The entries list Arthur's purchases: a silver pocket watch, a porcelain vase, a set of candelabras, but one entry dated 6 months ago, just before his death, catches her eye. "A.B. Consultation. 1892 cameo. Praised at £50, payment deferred." The year 1892 again, and the word cameo jumps out like a beacon. "This is interesting," she says, tapping the page. "You appraised this cameo for Arthur, didn't you? Why didn't you mention it before?" Finch's mouth opens and closes like a fish out of water. I forgot," he mumbles. "It was broken. Worthless. I told him to toss it." But Miss Marple knows a lie when she hears one, and she presses further. "Did Arthur say where he found it? Or why he was so interested in it?" Finch's shoulders slump and he sighs, as if the weight of secrets is too much to bear. "All right, Miss Marple," he says quietly. "Arthur came to me a month before he died. He dug up that cameo from his garden, said it was from an old flame. He wanted to know its value, but he was agitated. Kept saying he'd made a mistake, that someone might come looking for it." Finch glances at the locked drawer again, and Miss Marple seizes the moment. "What's in that drawer, Mr. Finch?" "Something Arthur left behind." She shares another tip. "When someone guards a hiding place, it's usually where the truth is locked away."
Ow.
Reluctantly, Finch unlocks the drawer and pulls out a small envelope, its edges yellowed with age. Inside is a receipt, dated 1892. For a cameo sold to Arthur Bantry by Emmeline Langley's father, with a note, "For services rendered, land deal." Miss Marple's mind races. The receipt ties the cameo to the land deal that angered Colonel Prothero, and services rendered suggests a transaction far more complex than a simple purchase. Was Arthur paid to break off his romance with Emmeline? Or was the cameo a bribe to secure the land? She tucks the receipt into her handbag, thanking Finch for his honesty, though she knows he's still holding something back as she prepares to leave. She notices a shadow past the shop window, a man in a dark coat, pausing just long enough to be seen before vanishing down the alley. Her heart skips. Chapter 9. The Colonel's Confession. As twilight descends over St. Mary Mead, enveloping the village in a veil of deepening shadows, Miss Jane Marple finds herself navigating the winding lane toward Colonel Lucius Prothero's manor once more. The revelations from Mr. Finch's antique shop still echo in her mind, like the distant toll of church bells, the 1892 receipt linking the shattered Cameo to a dubious land deal, Arthur Bantry's agitated appraisal of the broken heirloom, and the persistent shadow of a man in a dark coat that seems to follow her every step. The air is crisp with the scent of evening dew on the grass, and the first stars begin to prick the sky overhead. Miss Marple's steps are cautious but resolute, her umbrella gripped firmly not just for support but as a potential weapon should the need arise. She has arranged this late-night meeting with the Colonel under the pretense of discussing village affairs. But her true intent is to confront him with the mounting evidence that ties him to Arthur's suspicious death and the long-buried secrets of Emmeline Langley. The manor looms ahead, its windows glowing with the soft light of lamps, casting flickering patterns on the ivy-covered walls. Miss Marple knocks on the heavy oak door, and after a moment, Mrs. Harris. The housekeeper answers, her face etched with surprise at the late hour. Miss Marple, the Colonel wasn't expecting visitors this evening, she says, her voice a whisper, as if the house itself demands quiet. Miss Marple offers a disarming smile, the kind that has coaxed truths from even the most guarded souls over the years. It's rather urgent, Mrs. Harris, about Arthur Bantry and some old matters that need clarifying. The housekeeper hesitates, glancing over her shoulder, but nods and leads Miss Marple through the dimly lit foyer to the Colonel's study. The air inside the manor is thick with the aroma of pipe tobacco and aged leather, a comforting yet oppressive atmosphere that speaks of a life steeped in tradition and unspoken regrets. The Colonel is seated at his massive oak desk, a tumbler of whiskey in hand, staring into the flickering flames of the fireplace. His gray mustache droops slightly, and his eyes, usually sharp with military precision, seem clouded with fatigue or perhaps guilt. He looks up as Miss Marple enters, his brow furrowing. Miss Marple, at this hour? What's the meaning of this? His voice booms, but there's a tremor beneath it, like a crack in a sturdy facade. She takes a seat across from him without invitation, her posture straight and composed, and begins to lay out her discoveries methodically, as if knitting a scarf from threads of truth. Colonel, I've come about the Cameo the shattered. One found in Eleanor's garden. It's in about Emmeline Langley, the land deal of 1892, and a certain vial of poison buried under a rose bush Arthur tended so carefully. At the mention of Emmeline's name, the Colonel's hand tightens around his glass, the whiskey sloshing slightly. Miss Marple watches closely, recalling a sleuthing tip she's honed over countless mysteries. A man's grip reveals his heart loose. For indifference, tight for turmoil. She continues, pulling the diary, the letter, the receipt, and even a sketch of the cyanide vial from her handbag, spreading them across the desk like cards in a high-stakes game. You knew about the affair between Arthur and Emmeline, didn't you? And the Cameo was no mere trinket, it was a symbol of a love that threatened your own interests in that river plot. The receipt from Emmeline's father suggests a payoff. But to whom? Arthur, to end the romance? Or perhaps to you, for stepping aside in the deal? The Colonel's face reddens, his mustache twitching, but he remains silent, his eyes fixed on the documents. Miss Marple presses on, her voice steady and empathetic, knowing that confessions often come not from accusation, but from understanding. I've seen this before, Colonel, in human nature, the way old grudges fester like untended wounds. Arthur got the land, but at what cost? Emmeline left heartbroken, the Cameo broken, and buried. And when Arthur dug it up recently, perhaps to make amends or sell it, you feared the old scandal would resurface, reopening reputations, reopening wounds. She shares another insight. Secrets are like weeds. Pull one, and others sprout. Confessing can clear the garden. The Colonel drains his whiskey in one gulp, slamming the glass down with a thud that echoes through the room. Damn it, woman, he growls. You've no right prying into this. But his defiance crumbles, and he slumps back in his chair, the weight of years pressing upon him. After a long pause, filled only by the crackling fire, the colonel begins to speak, his voice low and gravelly. It was 1892, a lifetime ago. I was young, ambitious, set to buy that river land for a mill. Arthur was my friend, but he fell for Emmeline Langley, the squire's daughter. Her father despised the match, offered Arthur a bribe to back off. The Cameo as a keepsake, and the land at a steal. Arthur took it, married Eleanor instead, and I lost out. Bitter? Yes, but I moved on. Or thought I did. Miss Marple nods, encouraging him to continue. Then 6 months ago, Arthur came to me, rambling about guilt, digging up the past, literally. He'd found the Cameo, wanted to sell the land back to me cheap, make peace. But I snapped. We argued in his study. He poured sherry, and in a rage I slipped in the cyanide I'd kept from my army, dazed for vermin, I told myself. I collapsed and I buried the vial under the rosebush where he'd hidden the Cameo all those years. The confession hangs in the air like smoke, heavy and acrid. Miss Marple's heart aches for the broken lives, but her mind sharpens on the details. And the man in the dark coat, watching me lurking in shadows. The colonel shakes his head wearily. That's Finch. He knew about the appraisal, suspected foul play. I've been following you to see what you'd uncover, protecting his own skin, I suppose, since Arthur confided in him. Miss Marple makes a mental note. Finch the Watcher. Colonel's cyanide. She shares a final tip. Confessions heal, but justice mends. You must tell the authorities, Colonel. He nods, defeated, as tears glint in his eyes. A rare sight for a man of his stature. As Miss Marple... Chapter 10. The Final Gathering. Evening air in St. Mary Mead is thick with anticipation as Miss Jane Marple prepares for a gathering at Eleanor Bantry's cottage. A final act to unravel the tangled threads of the mystery surrounding the shattered Cameo. The village is cloaked in the soft glow of lanterns, the church bells tolling 7 as if heralding the truth about to be revealed. Her handbag, now a repository of clues, holds Emmeline Langley's diary, the cryptic letter, the 1892 receipt, and the cyanide Valich piece, a fragment of a story that began with love and ended in betrayal and death. Colonel Prothero's confession last night, admitting to poisoning Arthur Bantry in a fit of rage over an old land deal, has brought Miss Marple close to the truth, but questions linger. Mr. Finch's role as the shadowy watcher, Eleanor's unspoken knowledge, and the full weight of Emmeline's broken heart. Tonight, Miss Marple will bring everyone together. Colonel Prothero, Mr. Finch, and young Lucy too lay bare the secrets that have haunted St. Mary Mead for decades. Eleanor's parlor is warm and inviting, the fire crackling in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the chintz curtains. The group assembles around a polished oak table. Eleanor, pale but composed, clutching a teacup. Colonel Prothero, his military bearing softened by guilt, staring into the flames. Mr. Finch, fidgeting with his cufflinks, his eyes darting too. The door, and Lucy, the maid, twisting her apron, her face a mix of fear and relief. Miss Marple stands at the head of the table, her presence calm but commanding, like a schoolteacher about to deliver a lesson. Thank you all for coming, she begins, her voice steady and kind. We're here to put an end to the mystery of the shattered Cameo and to the pain it's caused. Secrets, you see, are like knots in a scarf. Pull them loose, and the whole pattern becomes clear. She shares a final sleuthing tip. Gather everyone involved. Because no one can hide forever when all eyes are watching. She begins by laying out the physical evidence, placing the Cameo's broken pieces. The diary, the letter, the receipt, and the vial on the table. The room grows still, the only sound the ticking of the mantel clock. This story starts in 1892, Miss Marple says, with Emmeline Langley and Arthur Bantry, 2 young lovers forbidden by her father. Emmeline carved this Cameo her own likeness as a token of their love. But her father bribed Arthur to end the affair, offering him a cheap land deal and the Cameo as a keepsake. Arthur accepted, breaking Emmeline's heart. She shattered. the Cameo, and hid it under a rose bush, where Arthur later planted his garden, marrying Eleanor instead. Eleanor's eyes glisten with tears, but she nods, confirming she knew of the old romance but never its full cost. Miss Marple turns to the Colonel, whose confession she now reveals to the group. "Colonel Prothero, you lost that land deal to Arthur's betrayal, and the wound festered for years. When Arthur dug up the Cameo 6 months ago, intending to sell the land back to you as an act of remorse, your anger boiled over. You poisoned his sherry with cyanide from your army days, burying the vial under the rose bush to hide your crime." The Colonel bows his head, his voice hoarse as he mutters, "I regretted it the moment it was done. I only wanted the land, not his life." The room gasps, Lucy clutching Eleanor's hand, but Miss Marple raises a hand for silence, her gaze shifting to Mr. Finch. "Mr. Finch, you appraised the Cameo for Arthur, knowing its history from Emmeline's father, who sold it to him in 1892? You've been watching me, haven't you? Following in that dark coat, fearing I'd uncover your part in this." Finch's face crumples and he nods, his voice trembling. "Arthur told me about the Cameo and the land deal last year. Scared said someone was threatening him. Maybe over the old scandal. I followed you to protect myself. I didn't want to be implicated in his death." Miss Marple nods, understanding his fear, but noting his silence enabled the cover-up. "You kept a receipt from 1892, she says, holding it up. "It proves the land deal was a bribe, tying you to the Langley family's dealings." Turning to Lucy, Miss Marple softens her tone. "Lucy, you found the letter in Arthur's study, a plea from Emmeline to keep their secret buried. Your courage in sharing it helped us see the truth. You feared it might point to Eleanor, didn't you?" Lucy nods, tears streaming down her face. "I thought Mrs. Bantry might have known, might have been angry about Emmeline." Eleanor shakes her head, reaching for Lucy's hand. "I loved Arthur, flaws and all. I never knew about the poison, but I suspected he was hiding something. In that garden." Miss Marple steps back, letting the weight of the revelations settle. "Arthur's death was no accident, but it was born of old wounds, love, greed, betrayal. The Cameo was the heart of it, a symbol of a promise broken and a secret buried too long. Emmeline Langley left St. Mary Mead, her heart shattered like her Cameo, and Arthur carried that guilt until his final days. When he unearthed the Cameo, he stirred up a past that someone Colonel Prothero couldn't bear to face." She pauses, her eyes sweeping the room. "But now the truth is out. The Colonel must face justice, and we must all learn to forgive. For secrets destroy more than they protect." The room is silent, the fire's glow softening the hard edges of truth. Eleanor speaks first, her voice steady. "Thank you, Jane. I can mourn Arthur properly now, knowing what happened." The Colonel rises, his shoulders squared, ready to turn himself in. Finch, chastened, promises to cooperate with the authorities, and Lucy clings to Eleanor, relieved her part is done. Miss Marple gathers her clues, tucking them back into her handbag, her work complete. She steps into the cool night, the village feels lighter, as if a fog has lifted. Oh, she shares one last thought. Every mystery has a human heart at its core. Understand that, and no secret can stay hidden. As the stars twinkle above St. Mary Mead, Miss Marple heads home, her knitting waiting by the fire. The Cameo's story is finished. Its piece is a reminder that love and loss linger long after the heart stops beating. Thank you for joining us on this journey through St. Mary Mead's shadows. If you've enjoyed unraveling this mystery